Thank you for joining us, Sundar Katwala. Well, let's take a look at reactions across the nations. In a moment, we'll talk to James Shaw in Glasgow and Hal Griffith in Cardiff. But first to Chris Page in Belfast.
Well, Joanna, the big question hanging over politics here in Northern Ireland is, will there be an election to the Stormont Assembly this side of Christmas? And the events in Westminster have, of course, added a huge degree of uncertainty to that. As things stand, the current Northern Ireland Secretary, Chris Heaton-Harris, has said he is planning to call an election this Friday. That is when the deadline for the restoration of the devolved government here runs out. The Democratic Unionist Party are currently refusing to join in a power-sharing coalition and therefore blocking the formation of a devolved government at all over their opposition to the Brexit trade border in the RSC known as the Northern Ireland Protocol. And the DUP says it won't change position as long as checks on goods arriving here from Great Britain continue. The DUP leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, has this afternoon congratulated Rishi Sunak. He has also said that Mr Sunak needs to bear in mind that the protocol is polluting, in his words, every area of government in this part of the UK, and that the operation of devolution in Northern Ireland is incompatible as long as the protocol still exists. Sinn Féin, who replaced the DUP as the largest party here at Stormont in Assembly elections in May, they say they were really indifferent as to who took over at the top of the Tory party and as head of government in London, but they have said Mr Sunak should be prioritising working to restore devolution here. So that is one of the big challenges facing the new Prime Minister. How do you restore power sharing at Stormont? Always a fragile affair, and now that the impasse has lasted for 9 long months. The question this week, will Mr Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary, still be in his job come Friday to call that election, as he has said that he will, or will there be a cabinet reshuffle? He could be replaced by somebody who, for example, has different ideas. Worth noting, though.
Well, thanks to Chris and thanks to Joanna. We'll be back live in Downing Street here in the next little while. You're watching BBC World News. I'm Matthew Amroliwala. On today's Global, Rishi Sunak will be the UK's next Prime Minister. The former Chancellor will become the UK's first British Asian Prime Minister and the youngest for more than a century, and says the country faces profound economic challenges.
We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
We'll be live in Downing Street and have reaction from across the UK and around the world as the UK has its third Prime Minister in 7 weeks. Also on today's programme, we'll have the latest on the war in Ukraine. The US, Britain and France condemns Russia's claim that Ukraine is preparing to use a radioactive dirty bomb on its own territory. Reports from Myanmar say at least 50 people have been killed in a bomb attack on a concert organised by one of the country's biggest ethnic insurgent groups. And disgraced former Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein faces charges of rape and sexual assault in Los Angeles. Hello and welcome to BBC News. Rishi Sunak has promised stability and unity after winning the race to become the leader of the Conservative Party and the UK's next Prime Minister. He said it was the greatest privilege of his life. The former Chancellor won the leadership contest after his only remaining rival, Penny Mordaunt, withdrew. He'll be the first person of colour to become British Prime Minister, and he's the youngest this century at 42. Well, in the last few minutes, Rishi Sunak said the country faced profound economic challenges. He takes over after the brief but chaotic tenure of Liz Truss. Let's go live to Westminster and now to our UK political correspondent, Rob Watson. So, Rob, it is Rishi Sunak and just his first comments in the last half an hour talking about the greatest privilege of his life, but pretty quick to get on to the profound challenges the UK faces.
I hope.
Barney Chowdhury, we have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us with those thoughts. Let me take you back to Downing Street because plenty more coverage on those developments. There, the door number 10, and of course we saw Rishi Sunak at Conservative Party headquarters. We haven't seen him here, but of course news he will be the next Prime Minister. He talked about the profound economic challenges the UK faces, and he talked about it being the greatest privilege of his life. We're live back in Downing Street here on today's programme in just a moment or two. Don't go away. This is BBC World News. I'm Matthew Amroliwala. On today's Global, Rishi Sunak will be the UK's next Prime Minister. The former Chancellor will become the UK's first British Asian Prime Minister and the youngest in 200 years. He's talked about the profound challenges the country faces.
It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to.
Also on today's programme, we'll have more news from right around the world, including the latest on Ukraine. And the disgraced former Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein faces charges of rape and sexual assault in Los Angeles. Hello and welcome to today's Global. Britain's former Chancellor Rishi Sunak has won the contest to become the British Prime Minister. He'll be Britain's third leader in 7 weeks and inherits some of the worst economic problems in decades. He warned in the last hour or so the country faced a profound economic challenge, but he went on and started by saying this was the greatest privilege of his life. So let's go live now to Downing Street and live to my colleague Tim Wilcox, who's there for us.
Hello and welcome to BBC News live from Downing Street. 7 weeks after losing to Liz Truss in this year's first Tory leadership contest, Rishi Sunak is the new leader of the Conservative Party. Mr. Sunak is the first British Asian to head the UK government, and at 42 years old, he will be the youngest Prime Minister in more than a century. Mr. Sunak's victory was confirmed this afternoon when his last remaining challenger, Penny Mordaunt, dropped out of the race just a few minutes before the nominations closed. He will take office as the UK faces enormous economic challenges, and with Labour, the SNP and the Lib Dems all demanding an immediate general election so that voters can have their say. Just under an hour ago, Mr. Sunak made this statement to the country.
We're about to take a short break. When we're back, the latest from Westminster. We've seen in the last couple of hours those pictures of the next UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, arriving there at Conservative Party headquarters, where he talked about this being the greatest privilege of his life. So more on that, our main story here on BBC News in the next few moments. Don't go away. This is BBC World News. I'm Matthew Amroliwala. On today's Global, Rishi Sunak will be the UK's next Prime Minister. The former Chancellor will become the UK's first British Asian Prime Minister and the youngest for more than a century, and says the country faces profound economic challenges.
We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
We'll have the latest on that, our main story, also on today's programme. We'll also have the latest on the attack in Myanmar. Reports there say at least 50 people have been killed in a bomb attack on a concert organised by one of the country's biggest ethnic insurgent groups. Hello and welcome back to BBC News. 7 weeks after losing to Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak is the new leader of the Conservative Party and the next UK Prime Minister. Mr Sunak is the first British Asian to head the UK government, and at 42 he'll be the youngest Prime Minister in more than a century. Mr Sunak's victory was confirmed this afternoon when his last remaining challenger, Penny Mordaunt, dropped out of the race just a few minutes before nominations closed. He will take office as the UK faces enormous economic challenges, and with the opposition parties all demanding an immediate general election. Well, Rishi Sunak spoke in the last hour or so, saying it was the greatest privilege of his life. Barney Chowdhury, we're coming to the end of this edition of Global. Let's return to those pictures where we saw Rishi Sunak. This the moment he arrived at Conservative Party headquarters after news that his only challenger had dropped out. The Labour opposition has called it a coronation, not an election, but you can see the faces, the hugs, the smiles. As he himself said, it is the greatest privilege of his life. Talks about the profound economic challenges that lie ahead. More international reaction coming in the last few seconds, with Narendra Modi passing on his congratulations. Well, next up, Hugh Edwards, my colleagues, will take you through the latest from Westminster here on BBC News. That is next.